Okay, take it away.
All right, everybody. All right, everybody. Welcome to another NERSA NCAA football officiating learning community session tonight. Amy Pistone, who is a back judge in the Mid-American Conference, is going to be giving a presentation called "New Ref on the Block: Being a Good Swing/Supplemental Official." So I will turn it over to her. Amy, floor is yours.
Thank you. So hi everyone. Thanks for joining us. So I just to give you a little bit of background about why I decided this was what I wanted to talk about, was so my first 2 years reffing, I was in the GLIAC in Michigan, and I was on a crew, and it was great. And I was on one crew the whole time, and I just assumed that's how every crew ran all the time. And then when I moved into the COC, so most folks, when you first get into the COC or any kind of conference, for folks who haven't been in that position, basically you get a couple games, might be with different crews. And so all of a sudden I went from the same people for 2 straight seasons to working with a whole bunch of folks. So I was in the Missouri Valley for several years. Most of that was as a supplemental official or swing official, where I was working with different crews from week to week. Then I was on a crew and then for 1 season, and then got promoted to the MAC. And then I was back to being a supplemental official, where I was rotating around from crew to crew. And so I've had a lot of experience at different levels being a swing official. And so I thought that would be something that I had some stuff to share on. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So, there are, for some of you have been in this position, and I would encourage you to interrupt anytime if there are things that I left out. I kind of just went through and tried to think through all of the things that I have learned over the past many seasons of working with different crews. And then, but please do chime in at any time if there's stuff that I've forgotten, stuff people have questions, or if there's anything that people want to sort of add. This is not exhaustive by any means. So, swing official. There are a lot of pros and also some cons. The pros, you get to meet more officials. So last season, I was a swing official in the MAC, and I worked with every single crew. I was a new official in that conference, and I got to meet everybody. Fantastic opportunity. Got to see how all different crews do things, got to meet everybody. Everyone kind of got to see my face and see if I knew how to work. You can network, just knowing more officials, having a bigger network of people that you can send plays to, things like that. Those are all great things. You get to see a lot of different ways of doing things. Different crews all have their own kind of ways that they do communication, all the different little things that happen besides like the actual calling the game, mechanics on the field, things like that. The cons, they're kind of a lack of crew camaraderie, right? You're always new. And that can be tough. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as well. And just needing to kind of adjust from week to week. There's something really nice about getting to know your whole crew in the off season. You talk to everybody, you get a sense of what everyone's personalities are like. You start to know how to handle disagreements, and just really get a good feel for each other and the kind of things that really makes a good crew gel and cement and be able to really trust each other and work through difficult situations out on the field. Swing officials are not always part of that process. And so that can be a downside that is hard both for someone who's working as a swing official and if you have a swing official on your crew. So I'm going to kind of talk about it from both perspectives here, just so you can kind of think about all the different ways that these ideas can help out with a crew. So first of all, I want to focus on the opportunities that this affords you. Usually when you are first getting a look at a new level, whether that's just breaking into college, whether that's moving up to a new division, a new conference, any of those kinds of things, it's a promotion, right? It's an opportunity to, you're getting more exciting games, you're working higher profile games, you have bigger assigners' eyes on you, things like that. And there are a lot of opportunities there. So some ways to make the most of those opportunities. First, really, I would urge folks to communicate with your crew chief and the crew that you're going to be working with as early as possible. Each crew has their own way of doing things, and you aren't going to know what they do and what they expect if you don't ask. And so just reaching out to the crew chief when you get that assignment, just saying like, hey, I'm going to be working with you week 3 of the season. Just wanted to reach out if you want to chat. If there's anything you want me to know, be thinking about in advance before you get into that week where all the pregame stuff is ramping up for that game. It's hard to replace someone that the whole crew likes, and crews generally understand how the process works, but like they still kind of miss the person who's gone. So I work as a back judge. I am stepping in to replace a back judge that like the crew really likes their back judge. They're friends, they get along great, they're used to their normal back judge. And so for last season, there's always this kind of sense of I am replacing someone, and there's just going to be little stuff that I am not the same as whoever their normal back judge is. And so just thinking about all of the ways before it gets to be game day that you can minimize that adjustment or that transition process can help out a lot. So this is, again, not at all an exhaustive list, but some of the things that I would recommend if you are working with a crew that you don't know folks, some things that you might not think to ask. So moving from high school, and I worked with actually kind of a lot of people that you may have seen presentations for this group who were working college when I was working high school. So that made the transition a bit easier for me. But still things like, when does everyone get into town for the game? If you're not used to a Division I procedure for everyone needs to be in town by Friday night, you might think that late Friday night's fine. Really, you need to be in town by 5 o'clock because that's when pregame happens, things like that. So when does everyone get in town? When is pregame? When is there dinner? All of those kinds of logistical details. Really recommend to know what we are wearing to the game site. I have seen a lot of people get into trouble from just not having a sense of how nicely you are dressing. And that varies a lot from conference to conference. Moving up from D2 to D1, there may be very different expectations about, do you wear sport coats? Do you wear ties? Do you wear, how nicely are you dressed? Or do you go half dressed to the game, wearing like a pullover or something like that? Just the kinds of things that if you're the one person that didn't dress like everyone else did, can really make a pretty negative impression and hurt the crew just before the games even started. Some other stuff, can you help out with carpooling or other logistics? These are just the kind of being a good crewmate things. If there's going to be a long drive, bring snacks. I'll offer to be the person who gets the rental car if that's going to be helpful. Most crews kind of have their thing that they do for this, but just being very open to stepping in to do any of those kinds of things that can just help smooth the process over. And then what does the normal person do for pregame? Sometimes I was in some situations, sometimes the back judge is the person who brings the like radio play, the speaker, the Bluetooth speakers, sets the playlist. And if you don't know that you are replacing the person that does that, the person that brings candy to the pregame, the person who whatever, I just have always felt really bad when that thing is not there that everyone's used to, because I didn't know I was supposed to bring Bluetooth speakers, or I didn't know I was supposed to bring that thing. So just some of the less obvious questions that you can ask to make sure that it's a pretty smooth and seamless process for all of the stuff around the game. And then any particular communication or lingo that the crew uses. I'm trying to skim real quick people that are in the room. I don't think anybody here is in. So supplemental swing officials were assigned to, in the COC or in the MAC, we were all assigned to a crew just to make sure that like information that was conveyed through referees was getting to all of the swing officials. So the crew that I was with, I worked a couple games as their back judge last season, and they have different words, different abbreviations, different things. And there was a little bit of a learning curve for figuring out just knowing the way, and like a lot of them were great things. The idea of having, rather than saying replay, when you want to talk to replay, having a different code word that you use for replay, so that if you're standing right next to a coach and rather than say replay, can you look at whatever, It's not so obvious. So they would have some different ways that they would talk to replay, different kind of like code word they would use for talking to the replay official. Just lingo. This white hat really wanted after a punt play just to get on the O2O and say all clear. That is not something I had ever done before, and it took a little bit of getting used to. But these are things that the crew that I was subbing in with were used to having, right? The white hat was used to having knowledge that there's no flags down, everything's good, we can go to media timeout. And so just some of these things that are not necessarily obvious, and they're not things that are in every crew's pregame or in the mechanics manual, things like that. I just noticed we have a comment from Matthew here. Yeah, so this question was, as a swing official, when do you ask all these questions? Week before, beginning of the season? Could you discuss that? So this is going to vary a lot by different white hats in terms of when they're thinking about those things. I will say, so in the conference that I work, there are like very different styles among some of the different white hats. Some well, there's no point in being coy here. I can just go ahead, and I had this to show later. Give me 1 second. So Jeremy Valentine, who was great, love Jeremy. I was working a game with them week 1. It was my first game in the COC. And midsummer, he emails me a individualized, I was only working 1 game with his crew, an individualized crew guidebook that had everything in it. And he wanted to talk midsummer. Most white hats are not on quite that level in terms of how organized and ahead of time and everything they want. So normally when I get the assignment, I'll kind of reach out to the white hat fairly early and say like, hey, I saw him with you guys on week 6, looking forward to it. Let me know if there's anything that you need me to be doing. Most crews, I want to say, are not really thinking about week 6 until week 5-ish, just in terms of kind of like, you got a lot going on all week from week to week. You're not really thinking about week 6 pregame until week 5 has happened. But I think the sooner you can reach out just to be proactive would be my suggestion. But I don't know. We have some white hats on here. Anybody want to?
Lights out the door.
Yeah. So, and yeah, if folks have other questions, please let me know. Jump in whenever you feel like it. Okay. So yeah, any particular communication, things like that. These are generally things, most of these, like I'm going to reach out to the white hat, when I get the assignment, maybe a week or so before, if I haven't heard anything, you just want to be kind of proactive about it. A lot of this is the kind of stuff that like the week of when the pregame emails, things like that go out for the crew. I can ask about logistical stuff. I can text somebody on the crew if there's somebody that I know better than other people, just to be like, hey, how, is there stuff I can help out with? Would it be helpful if I rent a car? Stuff like that. And then some of this is the kind of stuff like communication lingo that your crew, that's the kind of stuff you can talk about during the pregame of just like, are you guys going to be using any weird code words I don't know about? That kind of stuff. Because I'm a back judge, I need to talk to the white hat a little bit more about just some of the different communication between the back judge and the white hat. But those aren't going to necessarily apply to everyone. But I have kind of a little checklist of other stuff that I'm going to talk through during pregame at some point, just to be able to get a sense of like, hey, if the play clock's wrong, do you want me resetting it? Do you want me to let you know? All the different little kind of specifics that are about communication between the back judge and the white hat. But those aren't necessarily things that people at every position are going to need to do either. Okay. These are a couple specific things for folks who are moving up that seemed relevant beyond just like you're a swing official in a conference, but this is more the sort of the COC has supplemental officials. So people who are their prospects are getting a couple games. They're not fully on staff. And I think there's some other things you want to especially consider when you are in that position where you're really getting a shot. You're kind of auditioning to be in that conference more full time. So depending on the levels, a lot of things to ask. But I would say, again, first and foremost, talk to the crew chiefs early. Ask them if there are things that you might not think to prepare for. If you have a mentor in the conference or division that you're going to be working those games in, a really good person to reach out to as well and say, like, what are the kinds of things I'm not going to know to think about? There's some obvious stuff, right? You need to know the rules, you need to know the mechanics. If you're getting an opportunity at a position that is not your normal position, you need to make sure you know all of the stuff that's expected of you. But there's going to be a lot of unwritten expectation kind of things as well, just around game attire. Should you be bringing your own radio? Does the conference have radios? Does the crew have a set of radios? Like all of those kind of little things. And a mentor, or if you have a mentor who knows someone, if you don't know someone in that conference, but you maybe know someone who knows someone, finding a way to get in touch with somebody that you can kind of ask those questions, I think is really, really important. Some conferences have an onboarding manual. So for the COC, I was part of the group that put together an onboarding manual that has like everything. What is quick ref? When are things supposed to be in? What is, what are some things to be thinking about for pregame, different schools? What are the hotels we stay at? Tried to be a really exhaustive resource for new officials so that you don't run into these problems where like you just didn't know that you have to be there at a certain time. You just didn't know that there's some expectation around what you're wearing. You can't wear certain brands. You can't have visible logos, things like that. As I showed earlier, some crew chiefs have a crew manual. Jeremy Valentine's the only person I've ever known to have one, but they're, that is the thing that does technically exist out there. And so, finding some way to know all of those other things that aren't in like the official COC mechanics, but all of the other things that a certain conference is going to want from you. Okay, I'm just going to pause for a moment. Any questions before? Okay, got some more stuff then. Other things to think about. If at all possible, would really encourage you to make all of the social activities and or carpool if you're offered that opportunity. I know Dave Siegel is in the Zoom room. I don't like baseball, and he knows I don't like baseball. And I was working with his crew. I think it's boring, not that interested in going. And he was giving me a bit of a hard time because when I was working with his crew, the crew thing that we were going to see a Toledo Mud Hens game. And I mean, it's not like I can't go watch a baseball game. But I would never want to miss an opportunity to spend time with the crew, like extra, especially when you're a swing official. I think in general, it's a good thing to do just on all crews, but when you're not familiar with everybody on the crew, I think it's really important to, even if you don't really feel like going out to a baseball game, even if you're a little jet lagged, even if you're, whatever the activity is, I think it's really important to take the opportunity to be at all of those events because that's the place where you can start to build some of that camaraderie that you don't have the whole season with people that you've gotten, games and games and games. But that's the place where you can start to have a little bit more banter, get a feel for, they can get used to you, you can get used to them, so that when you are on the field, when things happen, you all have a little bit of rapport, and you kind of gotten to know each other in advance. So you'll be ready to deal with any kind of situations that come up. Carpool if you're offered that opportunity. I will say I travel from the West Coast to games, and sometimes I am so jet lagged and cranky and sleepy and like don't really want to. It just feels like kind of a pain to sometimes get like, okay, now I'm gonna like hang out a little bit longer at the airport so that I can give somebody a ride. But if at all possible, I would really encourage you to make the every effort to take part in those things. That said, the most important thing is to be able to do your job right on the field. And if watching the Friday night football games instead of going to sleep is going to make you not a good official the next day. Like being a good official is going to take priority, I would say. But that said, if without compromising your work on the field, take the opportunity to hang out with that crew, both for tangible and intangible reasons. There, I think it's a good thing for your promotion, for your advancement, just for your general kind of reputation in a conference, to be the kind of person that people want to spend time with. Right, the kind of person that would be a good crewmate, not just the kind of person who can nail pass interference calls, but the kind of person that you want to have on a crew in like a more holistic sense. Yeah, I think that was all I had to say on that one. I really try to ask for feedback, just because I don't know. I think sometimes people will reach out with unsolicited, like, hey, I noticed that you had a real iffy hold call or something, like if we're watching film. But especially, generally speaking, I think a crew, well, let me back that up. I don't know how all crews do this. When I was on a regular crew in the Valley, a lot of our conversations were sort of among ourselves, right? We had a crew group text, we had email things. So a lot of times when we're breaking down plays beyond just kind of the immediate post-game stuff, sometimes that's just going to be within the crew because, the supplemental official, you might not see them again. And so I try to be really transparent and not aggressive, but something close to aggressive about making sure to ask for feedback from officials. Just was there anything you noticed about my communication that could have been better? Were there things that you think my positioning, were there things that you're used to getting from your normal back judge you weren't getting from me? Any of those kinds of things, just to make sure that you're getting the most out of that opportunity for feedback from a different group of officials than you normally work with. Open to trying new things that a crew does to a point. Again, I think there's a balance between doing things the way that this crew does them because you want them to be used to things, you want them to be comfortable, you want things to be as smooth as possible, and also things that are going to throw you off your own game. And so there isn't like a magic answer to what that balance is, but I would say trying new things to a point, but also there are some things that, I tell officials like that this is what I need. Like you are deep wings, I'm your back judge tonight. And like this is how I need to be in this position, or this is where I need to be looking on this kind of play. Does that work for you guys? But then there are other things where like, hey, how are you normally communicating this? What's your timing for this other thing? There are a lot of things where I am perfectly happy to adjust to whatever a crew is used to make things kind of as smooth as possible. So there's a line there somewhere. And then I would really encourage people to reflect on what you did and didn't like about each experience. As a swing official, you see, I don't know, I saw how many crews are there in the mat, like 8 or something. So, I got to see like 8 different ways of doing things last season. That's a lot of different, how do crews communicate? How do deep wings, what role do they have? How do people do stuff in pregame? How do people handle coaches? Like that's a whole bunch of different ways that you get to see and do kind of have I don't know, like a buffet of options for like, okay, well, I really like how they did this, and I do not like how they did this other thing. I really like the way that umpire handles things in the middle, and I really, really don't like the way that this other umpire handles things in the middle. And so the goal, presumably, for everyone is to be on a regular crew one day. And being able to sort of reflect on all the different things that you're seeing, whether it's white hat communication, whether it's the way the line of scrimmage officials work with each other, but seeing all of those different things and then having kind of a wealth of ideas that may or may not work in different situations, I think it's a really good opportunity to develop that toolbox of different things that may work in different kinds of situations. There's a lot of, so for high school stuff, I work line of scrimmage, and I've never worked line of scrimmage at the college level. And so being able, like, I have I have a whole big box of things that I've seen different line of scrimmage officials do, how they handle coaches, what their mechanics look like, how they signal things. And when I'm working a high school game at line of scrimmage, like I can try all of those different things out. Like, man, this communication really isn't working with my cross-field partner. Let me try something else that I've seen a different line of scrimmage official do. And so I think it's one of the things that makes being a swing official like a really rich learning opportunity is that you get to see so many different things. And they're all different things that you kind of have in your Rolodex to try and to bring to a crew or bring to your own game down the road. There was something in the chat. A bucket list item. So the Toledo Mud Hens, I don't much care for baseball as a sport. I love minor league baseball teams and their mascots. And the Mud Hens, they have a lady mud hen, and her name is Madonna, and it made me so happy. It was well worth watching baseball to get to see Madonna, the female mascot there. Okay. And then I wanted to throw out a couple things that for people on the other side of this situation. So a lot of this was geared from the perspective of someone who's new on a crew. How can you help, blend in? How can you make the most of your opportunity? How can you make your crew like you and feel comfortable with you there? I wanted to throw out a couple things that crews can do to help out when you have a guest. This is going to be a little bit of a side tangent, but so my day job is teaching ancient Greek literature, history, mythology, things like that. And ancient Greek culture is obsessed with hospitality. Like it is the number one thing. You treat guests right and you treat hosts right. They are obsessed with it. And so when I was thinking, I was like, this feels like something that I have a lot of perspective on from reading ancient Greek history about how important it is to treat your guests well and to be nice to your host. So things you can do to help out your guests. At its worst, and hopefully none of you are in conferences where this is the case, but at its worst, being a swing official means that you're depriving that crew of their buddy and you're crashing a party where everybody knows and likes each other and you are the weird stranger, right? Not generally what happens. Most officials are good people, crews have good dynamics, but sort of the far end of what can go wrong or kind of the worst case scenario when you're working with a different crew is that they're thinking about how much more they like their other back judge or their other whatever, right? And you're kind of being, it's hard sometimes not to feel like you are being measured against this other person and you want to like not cause problems. And that's not a great position to be in. And so I will say I really appreciate crews that go out of their way and think about how to make someone fit in. And the crews in the COC do a fantastic job of this, but not everyone is necessarily working in the COC. So some situations that can be legitimately super hard to navigate. I pretty early in my officiating career was working a game with a crew that I didn't know the people that well. And there was a play that I should have taken an official off a flag. And this was a level that I wasn't used to working at. And I talked with the white hat about this afterwards. And he was like, yeah, I would have liked to see you take, really, there were possibly 2 flags that I should have talked people off of. And it was a good learning experience because I was just like, yeah, I just want to fit in. I just want to keep my head down. I just want to not cause problems. And I don't know these people. So like, I don't know how they're going to react if I come in and say, we don't want that flag. Or what'd you see there? I really don't think that it was early contact, whatever. And so, I think like that is a situation that when people don't feel like they know each other and trust each other, that those kind of conversations can be super hard to navigate for a new official in the room who doesn't know how everyone responds to that kind of thing. And I was in a different situation with officials that I didn't know very well. And there was like a real dispute about how to handle there was a penalty enforcement issue. And it got kind of heated, and the official, like there were several officials came together to discuss this, and there was a real disagreement about what the enforcement should be. And it just stuck with me because as someone who doesn't know anyone that well, and doesn't really have a lot of, I didn't have a lot of previous experience or kind of rapport with any of the people involved. And it was getting pretty heated, and I sort of feel like I'm in the middle of this fight that I don't know what to do about. And so I think these were just a couple moments that came up from situations where I didn't feel like I was the best swing official that I could be, or the best supplemental official that I could be in those situations, in large part because I just wasn't sure, like, how can I handle this in a way that's going to be constructive, a way that isn't going to cause more problems. And so I don't have an answer to any of those, but I think just some things for folks to be aware of when officials are coming in, because ideally, like, you want your guest official to be the person who can step up when needed and say, no, we don't want this flag. Or, hey, the penalty enforcement, I feel confidently that it is from previous spot and not whatever. And so those were a couple situations that I think they were tough, and I could have handled them better if I'd been a little more comfortable in that situation, a little more comfortable kind of stepping up as the outsider on that crew. These are just some things that people did have done over the past couple of years for me that I really appreciated. Although, like, whatever the crew activities that people do, the having, if there's a pre-game playlist or whatever crew activities are going on, just sort of making sure that like I know about them in advance, right? Making sure that people can make their travel plans accordingly, so that they can be part of all of those things and really feel like they are. I rarely have like a song playlist idea that comes right to mind when I'm asked, but it's really nice to be asked. If you are in a conference or with a crew that is going to have some sort of a mechanics meeting or beverages the night, like at night back at the hotel, something like that. Being asked in advance, like, hey, is there something in particular you would like us to get, or snacks or whatever for the pregame, and just proactively sharing any of these things with officials who may not know to ask. If someone is brand new to, and they're just kind of like, oh my God, I'm getting my chance in this conference, like this is my first college game, I don't even know where to start, my head's spinning. Anything that you can do proactively to help them know about any of these things that are potential pitfalls that could get them into trouble or could just make them feel off their game, right? Again, the sort of like not being dressed like everyone else is dressed when you get to the stadium. Like that can throw a whole pregame vibe off when you're the one person who feels super conspicuous because you aren't wearing a jacket and everyone else is wearing a jacket, something like that. If you have a woman on your crew, telling them to, or a woman who's visiting your crew, making sure that the facilities are taken care of for them is a huge one. There is nothing worse than it being a place that does not know that there's going to be a female official there, and getting sent like around to the far ends of the earth. I worked a playoff game at Sac State, and I don't know if Sac State this was 3 years ago, maybe. I'm not sure if they'd had a woman work a game there ever before, and it was pouring rain, it was freezing cold, and the room they gave me, the hot water never got hot. So it was just, they weren't prepared to have another shower, and the room I was in just got to take a cold shower after we were soaked through and freezing cold. I have showered in mostly high school games, but like the moldiest, just most disgusting rooms you can imagine. So if you have a female official on your crew, especially if it's like in a conference that isn't used to having female officials, that's a huge thing you can do as well to make sure they're not going to be wandering around in the grossest room you've ever seen. So those are most of the things that I prepared. And I thought, I'm sure that folks have a lot of other things that they could suggest, things from their own experience. So I kind of wanted to leave some time. Like I said, this is not at all an exhaustive list, but I have worked a lot of games as a swing official. So I thought I had some stuff to share there. So anybody have comments, questions, things to contribute, things that you do with your swing officials that are super great that I did not include here?
I think one of the things too, from a perspective of, hosting the swing official, although Amy and I worked a game last year and we both coming from the West, and based on where the game was and the closest airport being like $400 more expensive than alternatives, I made sure I reached out to her about what I was going to do because what I could find to make it less expensive. And I think that's a good way to loop people in and keep people plugged in about like feeling a little bit more a part of things. Keep an eye on stuff like that. If you know somebody's coming from someplace and you're flying in too, maybe try to connect with them actively instead of waiting on the new person to do that. I think that can be a way to help people out too.
Well, and also, I mean, just for when folks are new, because a lot of the supplemental and swing officials are people who are new to that level. You may not know like where you fly for a game at Southern Illinois. It's like not at all obvious how you get there if you have to fly in. And so any of those kind of like just tips, things about like, hey, it's not obvious that our hotel is going to actually be like an hour away from the game site. So you might want to take that into account when you are booking your travel, or here's, people usually fly into this airport, but this one could also work. It was a huge help. Somebody, I'm trying to remember what school we were at, but like flying into Columbus, and he's like, I can pick you up on the way up. I'm driving by there anyway if you want to fly into Columbus. And like, I would not have considered that. And it saved me a couple $100s and we got to have a little road trip. And so yeah, I think any of those like help with travel, especially for people who might not know like the lay of the land as well, is super helpful as well.
Amy, this is Derek Latimer. I have a few things to add. Your list
Yeah.
was impeccable. You did a wonderful job. As a swing official, I believe that you should make a number of calls, as you said, uh, throughout the week, early in the week, maybe starting on that Sunday or Monday. I'm a line of scrimmage official, so I want to call my wing partner. I want to make a call to my referee. I want to make a call to my crossfield partner, as well as to my back judge and my umpire, because I'm going to be dealing with those individuals on the field. They're going to rely on me. I'm going to rely on them. So since I'm a supplemental, and as you said, I'm a guest on a crew, I want to know how they do things and adjust to the way they work and see if we can come to some type of agreement throughout the week. I don't want to wait to the pregame, say 12 hours before, whatever that is, the night before. Try to get yourself accustomed of the way that referee wants you to report the files. So make that adjustment and practice that throughout the week. And if you are responsible for, say, some pregame, you have a pregame responsibility. If you're doing some type of scouting, don't do the bare minimum, because again, like you said, you're in an interview. So you want to go above and beyond. Show them that you're prepared and you put in the time and work and the effort to prepare not only yourself, but the crew for the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for adding those. And yeah, I will say I think another good thing that you can do just on the same vein there is having, if there's plays from the previous week, a lot of times like I'll text both of the deep wings that I'm going to be working with and just like, hey, how are we going to cover this play? Because I think those like looking at some plays together, I'm a millennial and I don't really like calling people on the phone. So I usually will text folks at least, like, hey, let's talk through this play. What are uh like who are you looking at on this play? Things like that. But yeah, for me, like the more time I can spend and the more comfortable I am with both of my deep wings, because like my biggest issues with communication on the field are going to be I need to make sure I'm really in sync with my deep wings, and then kind of the north to south communication or whatever with the white hat. And so, yeah, those are I think really like just to make sure that the people that you need to be extra, whether it's your side lane fit partners, whether it's your crossfield partner, but reaching out to them directly, I think can be a good idea just to make sure that so it's not all Friday evenings. Other folks. My list was just so incredibly exhaustive. God, I nailed it. Do folks have any questions or, I mean, situations that that have come up here? Or things that have things that you would really suggest that people not do when they are visiting in with a crew? I think we've all probably, if we could like anonymize them enough, but I think there's all been situations where we've been working with an official who really makes a bad impression on that interview for whatever reason. Like, are there things people have done that would be worth sharing with the group that one should definitely not do when visiting a crew?
You didn't know it all.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You didn't know it all. Just listen is twice as much as you talk, you know? That would just be my advice. And from my experience, you have guys that come on and ladies on a crew and they know everything, you know, and it's, you know, you don't want to set that precedence early that you know everything. You're a guest, you know. So, but you are an official, you're a professional. So if you have something to add, of course you want to add it, but you don't want to come across as a know-it-all. Don't be that asshole. Just be a great crewmate.
Yeah, I think don't be an asshole is a pretty good piece of advice for all crew experiences and interviews. I would agree with that. Somebody unmuted. They just iPhone. I would call on you, but I don't know who this is. Or maybe not. The one thing, and this is maybe I think it's probably an everyone piece of advice, but maybe also more important for women. I think there is a balance between being, you don't want to be a know-it-all and you don't want to be like loud and obnoxious, but I think also there is a risk of being too quiet and too unsocial, not engaged in, I think there, I don't know. I think sometimes people, when you're with a different crew, you can feel a little like not super confident, not super certain. And I think that if you go too far in the like listening and not speaking up, I think sometimes that can also present problems. So I think kind of finding that right balance, because you do need to have kind of a big and confident personality to be an official, right? And again, if this is a situation where you're effectively interviewing, like you need to present yourself in that way as well. So I think I think this does apply to everybody, but I do think especially for women, it is important to not be too small and quiet when you're interviewing, making that first impression. Anything else?
I got a question.
Yeah.
So I've heard like if I don't have a game one week and I'm looking for opportunities, asking to come shadow a crew, kind of what should I be looking for in a development opportunity there? Should I be taking notes? What should I be helping the crew with, or if anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people would have. I mean, I have thoughts, but I think a lot of folks also probably have thoughts on that. I would say to start, like I have a couple folks that I've met at clinics and camps and things over the years that they live near one of our schools, and they're like, if you have any games here, would it be okay if I sit in on pregame? And I think I've never seen a crew that doesn't want, if someone is an official who's trying to move up, trying to learn, we've always been pretty comfortable inviting people to the pregame, letting them ask questions, just kind of see how things are run at that higher level. And I don't know, I think when I was like, I would go to a lot of, when I was trying to get into college, I would go to some Bliat games and, just write down, sit in on a pregame, watch from the press box, and, seeing both like communication, but also just kind of getting a sense for how things were done at that level, what professionalism looks like at that level, the kind of things that you can't get from watching film. right? Because I mean, you can get access to a lot of film and there's a lot you can get from watching film. But I think if you have the opportunity to go in person, I think it's all that other stuff that doesn't show up on film, right? The way that people are talking to one another, the way that dead ball officiating is happening, the way that people are talking to coaches. I think a lot of that is stuff. Also, bring your gear if you're shadowing, just in case. You never know. Get that call to come save the day, come flying off the sideline there with your. Anyone else have thoughts on Peyton's question? There's a lot more experience in this room than, there's a lot of people who've been doing this longer than I have. I've really seen it all. A room full of referees who don't have something to say. That is a first. Nick?
No, I mean, I kind of echo what you would say about, I've had officials over the years, more so in the GLIAC than anywhere else, kind of sit on a pregame. And I think that's an easy thing to do, an easy thing to ask. It's not, obviously not everybody can accommodate all the time, but making yourself known to, if you live close some places, I think is the best way to do that. So it's a way to build your network, if nothing else, when people are in town.
And that was something that I think really, when you're working with different officials, especially, like the Valley feeds into the MAC, feeds into the Big Ten, like it's all the same people talking to all the same people. And so I think, for us especially, and if you're in any kind of area where like it's a geographic area or there's some kind of a pipeline where folks are advancing, any good impression you make on somebody, like referees talk a lot. And I think, this is not really the situation as it would happen, but say I work a game with Nick and he's a young up and coming official and I'm like, man, I really think he has some potential. And, that's the kind of thing that people mention to other officials. So if he's a huge jerk, he's a know-it-all, he doesn't want to listen to people's feedback, like that's going to get back to people higher up. But it's also, if he has a good attitude and wants to learn, I'm not in a position to control Nick's future, unfortunately. But yeah, I think that referees do talk to each other a lot, and any good impression you make somewhere, or like if you're super professional, if you are just nails on your rules knowledge and you get a reputation as like, man, that person, like, they're brand new to college, but like they know their rules inside and out. Like they had clock status, they knew everything. Those are the kind of things that people get a reputation for. Like that's someone you want to keep an eye on. That's someone who should be in the pipeline. They should be getting a look, maybe not this season, but next season. So I think those are like any of those little things that you do, whether it's you're observing in a pregame and you ask some really great questions, or you have, some really good rules knowledge, something like that. I think any of those little things, like it really is an interview, and any of those little things might be something that pays off down the line.
You can all decide later whether those nice things or mean things Amy just said about me is how she actually feels.
I think I've been very clear about how I think you have a bad attitude, and I'm not sure that you're going to make it that far in officiating. I've been very clear about that from the start. Any other questions? We've got about 10 minutes left. If folks have questions, or we could wrap and go see what's going on in the Stanley Cup Finals if folks don't have questions. Okay, well, I might go ahead and say that we have exhausted. Everyone here is now an expert at how to be and treat excellent swing officials. So thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for folks who contributed, and yeah, I got nothing else. Nick, you got any announcements, or should we just close it down?
Just to wrap up, first of all, let me thank you for being willing to step up and lead the session. We are well scheduled through early September. So I appreciate everybody who's volunteered already to sign up. We still are looking for spots once the season gets started, but I recognize that's pretty far off for now. So I'm not too worried about that. The last thing I want to say is the next planned meeting is on Monday, the 1st of July. I intend to go over the CFO test for at least the first 50 questions. I believe I read somewhere the test should be out on the 27th, which should give you a long weekend to hopefully get halfway done with it at least. So be on the lookout for an invitation for that. Otherwise, that's our currently next scheduled meeting, and I hope to see many of you there. Keep popping on the website for quizzes, and I got some more exams from other conferences. If your conferences have exams that you don't think that I have, please send them to me so I can repost, and they can serve everybody as we lead up to the clinic tests and CFO tests and stuff like that. So that's what I got. Thanks, everybody.